Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. We are live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play alongside Jerem Jordan. I am Spencer Linton. We're super excited to welcome in for the first time to the program the voice of the Cincinnati Bearcats. He is their play-by-play specialist and the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, Jerem, my number one team since 1996. He is Dan Hoard. Dan, welcome to the program. From one Bengals fan to another, it's great to have you with us.
Spencer, Jerem, it's great to be on your show. I hope this is a regular occurrence since we will be in the same league on July 1st. I am over the moon about joining the Big 12.
We feel this kinship, especially with the four, right? You know, which is awesome. What's it been like in the lead up for Cincinnati and Cincinnati fans to what we've all been hoping for a long time, which is to be included in a Power 5 conference?
We finally have a seat at the table, right? It's been long overdue for Cincinnati. We've been performing well enough to be a Power 5 school, and now we finally get our opportunity to be one. I would say Bearcat fans have been giddy about this since the announcement that it was going to happen. I was at an event for alums in Chicago last night with some of our coaches. It was packed. People were thrilled. There's so many great things going on right now at the University of Cincinnati. Not only the fact that they're joining the Big 12 in 24 days, I guess it is, but they were just reunited with Nike. I've got the Nike swoosh on my shirt here. Cincinnati is going to be a Jordan brand school in basketball. They are reunited with the Jordan brand. They'll be one of only 12 schools in the country that's Jordan brand. They helped popularize that back in the Kenyon Martin era. So I am calling this the greatest reunion since Andy and Red at the end of Shawshank Redemption, which is great.
Zihuatanejo.
San Juantaneo, exactly. But 2 weeks ago, they put shovels in the ground for a new indoor athletic facility. It looks more like the Sydney Opera House than an indoor football practice facility. So they are behaving like a Power 5 school. And as of July 1st, it's going to be great to be one.
Listen, BYU lost to said Jordan brand, Kenyon Martin clad Cincinnati Bearcats in the 2001 NCAA tournament. So, you know what? Tough memory there, but that's okay. We'll get over it.
All right, Dan, let's start with the current state of the program on the football side at Cincinnati. This is a team that's just a few years removed from making the college football playoff. It was an unbelievable run. It's hard to, I guess, do that again, certainly for any team in America. So you could call it a step back, but the program seems to be in a really great place. How would you define the state of Cincinnati football right now?
Well, we're going through a coaching change, obviously. Luke Fickell left at the end of last year for Wisconsin. Scott Satterfield takes over. He was the head coach at Louisville the last 4 years, and he was at Appalachian State for 6 years before that. 76-48, as you see on the screen, a 4-1 bowl record. He's a proven coach with a great offensive track record. It is challenging to step up in competition as a Big 12 member while going through a coaching change. I think if Luke Fickell had stayed for one more year, the transition probably would have been a smoother because of the current transfer, the NIL opportunity. I mean, every school in the country is dealing with guys transferring out and guys transferring in. And when you have a coaching change, it's multiplied. So, for example, at the wide receiver position, the Bearcats had 2 wide receivers drafted. Trey Tucker went to the Raiders, Tyler Scott, who went to the Bears, and 7 wide receivers transferred. So they lost 9 wide receivers. Their starting quarterback from last year, Ben Bryant, has transferred. He's going home to Chicago to play for Northwestern. So we are likely to have a transfer coming in as our starting quarterback, Emory Jones. So it's a transition time, but I still think they're optimistic that in a very short period of time, Cincinnati will be one of the better schools in the Big 12. That has been Cincinnati's history. Any league that they join in a short period of time, they rise toward the top of the pack, if not to the top of the pack, because Cincinnati is a tremendous hotbed for high school football. There are great players in this state. They don't get them all because of Ohio State and some of the other colleges nearby, but you don't have to get them all. If you get your share, Cincinnati will be very competitive in the Big 12.
I'm trying to remember which year it was. Maybe it was 2015, Gunnar Kiel, Tanner Mangum, the Elite 11 kind of conversation there. And then this year with Emory Jones and Keaton Slovis, it'll be the guys that have transferred in for 1 year who are in their third Power 5 league. It'll be a fun quarterback matchup there. And, of course, a Friday night in Provo in the home opener. It's going to be a big deal, obviously, for both schools to be in the league in week 2 of conference play. But for BYU, we can't wait for that night because we just think the energy is going to be electric in that first home game. What do you expect when these two teams tangle on September 29th?
Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. Our first conference home game is against Oklahoma, so naturally fans here are already fired up
Let's go.
about that opportunity to host the Sooners in their first Big 12 game. So the atmosphere, from my experience of going to Provo, is awesome under any circumstances. It's the most scenic view that any sportscaster gets, I think, at LaVell Edwards Stadium. So it's going to be a great night. I don't know that much at this point about your roster. I will, obviously, in time for that game. I know about Slovis. But the thing I remember from being there for football back in 2015 is that we couldn't protect our quarterback. BYU had 8 sacks in that game. So hopefully Cincinnati's offensive line performs a lot better this year than it did back in 2015.
Dan Hoard is the voice of the Cincinnati Bearcats. He is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Cincinnati's defense has been exceptional, and they've got a great track record going in that area. Is it going to remain this year? Will that remain the strength of Cincinnati football?
I think it'll be the strength of the team this year, no doubt about that. I think Cincinnati will have one of the best defensive lines in the Big 12 and maybe in the country.
Wow.
Pro Football Focus ranked our nose tackle, Dante Corleone. We call him the Godfather. They ranked him as the #1 nose tackle in college football. The guy that starts next to him on the defensive line, Juwan Briggs, is a future NFL player. Cincinnati is loaded up front. They've got a lot of changes at linebacker in the secondary, so that will be a challenge. But I'm really excited about the style of defense that Cincinnati is going to play under our new defensive coordinator, Brian Brown. He came with Scott Satterfield from Louisville. Last year, Louisville led the nation in sacks. Cincinnati faced Louisville in the Fenway Bowl last year. Cincinnati could not block the Cardinals, so it's a very aggressive scheme. I think Cincinnati is going to get after quarterbacks, and again, it all begins up front.
Certainly coming off of a playoff appearance 2 years ago, expectations for Cincinnati football are high. Yeah, there's a coaching change, quarterback change, and so on. For BYU, we're keeping expectations pretty low. So is Vegas, of sort of like get to a bowl game, maybe 7 wins in the regular season. But what are the expectations for the Bearcats?
You know, I think it's a similar situation for Cincinnati because of the coaching change and the step up in competition. I think a realistic hope for season 1 is to finish with a winning record, go to a bowl game, and hopefully win that bowl game. So maybe the coaches would like me to set the bar a little bit higher than that or lower. I'm not sure. But I think the fan base is somewhat realistic despite the recent run of winning 10 or more games and going to super high-profile bowl games. I think our fan base understands the Big 12 is going to be a challenge. The coaching change adds to that challenge, but I think our fans look at the schedule and think, you know what? There are 6 or 7 wins there. Let's see if they can do that, have a winning record, and go somewhere fun in the postseason.
Dan, we're enjoying the Cincinnati-BYU connection that's happening at the NFL level in Atlanta between Desmond Ridder and former BYU running back Tyler Algier. Tyler speaks very highly of Desmond, and that's a fun connection there. How do you keep track of all of that stuff bouncing between college and NFL in your very, very busy professional career?
You know, I think if I were a plumber or a dentist, I would follow sports just as closely. It's just I'm lucky that my vocation is the same as my avocation, I guess. But I'm excited about that Atlanta team as well. I'll go out on a limb right now on this show and say that the Atlanta Falcons will win the NFC South.
Let's go.
Now, maybe that might not be going out on a limb. The Bucs won the division at 8-9 last year. The other 3 teams finished 7-10.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Desmond Ridder is the only returning starting quarterback in the NFC South. The other teams all have new starters at quarterback. But I think Arthur Smith is an excellent coach, and they are doing everything in their power to help him succeed this year. Obviously, they drafted Bijan Robinson to go with Algier, so they've got a tremendous running game. They signed Jesse Bates away from the Bengals. We're going to miss him in Cincinnati, but I think he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. So you heard it here first. The Atlanta Falcons become The one team does it every year to go from worst to first in one of the NFL divisions, and the Atlanta Falcons will be one of those teams this year.
I love it. Great point you bring up about the NFC South. We had lunch with Taysom Hill a couple of days ago. Jeremy and I did, and he said, we stunk, and we almost won the division.
That's correct. And the Panthers and the Falcons can say the same thing. And you would think that the Bucs are going to take a step back without Tom Brady. So I suspect it's probably the Saints or the Falcons will win that division.
Dan, great to catch up with you. We appreciate the insights into Cincinnati Bearcat football.
Can you bring some Skyline chili to Provo for us?
I'd be happy to, as long as I get to share it with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Some Grater's ice cream while you're at it, too.
Yeah,
all the good things from Cincinnati. Dan, yeah, go Bengals. Let's go. I'm big on Joe Burrow, so it's great to meet you finally. I've listened to your voice for a lot of years.
Thank you very much. Great to have somebody in Utah on that Bengals bandwagon. It is growing by the day. This is the year that Cincinnati captures its first Super Bowl title.
Let's go. Dan Hoard with us. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.